also quickly glanced at the chart, chose a smooth purple cabochon from the basket. "We'll take both of these." "Lovely. But that chart isn't advisory, you know. We can't give any assurances about their healing powers." Becca felt obliged to explain, even as she wrapped the pretty rose quartz and amethyst in tissue paper. "I'm in software." Linda had replied with a grin that lit up her plain Midwestern face. "I'll be happy if they don't crash." "Only if you throw them." Becca couldn't help but return the tall woman's smile. "I'm Becca, by the way. Linda. And this is Pam." She was reaching for the package when her companion interrupted. "Wait, you're Becca? The Becca?" Eyes wide, the shorter woman pointed to a flyer, one of several Becca had hung months before. "The witch detective?" "Well, I'm trying." Becca looked down at the counter. "There hasn't been much call for mystical investigations recently." "Still, good to know." Pam ripped off 2 of the name and number slips at the bottom of the flyer, handing one to Linda. Both women were beaming. "And it's always good to meet another woman of power." Those crystals and her first sale of the day, a book on moon signs, had been it for Becca's shift. These days, more than half the little shop's business was online, and while that kept Becca from worrying too much about Charm and Cherish closing, it was these interactions that made the job worthwhile. "Are you in town for the conference?" This close to MIT, she picked up on local happenings. "Yup, we came in early," Linda replied. "A week in Boston at off-peak rates. How could I resist?" "Well, I'm glad you came by. Enjoy." She handed the woman her change and her bag and watched as the pair stepped out into what was still a warm late afternoon. That conference was on her mind as Becca herself emerged some 40 minutes later. Software and all its manifestations held no appeal for Becca. She wasn't a Luddite, far from it. While she considered herself Wiccan, and yes, a witch, on her best days she well knew the value of technology. She may have left behind her position as a researcher for retail, but if she couldn't search the local historical society's archives online, she might never have found the documents linking her to wise women, aka witches, from centuries before. A search that had led to her joining a coven and combining her interests in magic and research to set herself up as a witch detective. Without the internet, she realized, she'd have no idea who she was. But for her, tech had remained a tool rather than a vocation. At heart, Becca was old school, she'd decided. As grateful as she was for those online archives, nothing beat the smell of a library. Those last 2 customers might find enlightenment staring at screens, but Becca felt liberated to be looking up at the darkening sky. No, she corrected herself, exhilarated as the blue behind City Hall deepened to amethyst purple and the clouds above glowed a vibrant rose. Jeff, her ex, had been a software designer. Among his other failings was his unwillingness to believe in magic. For Becca, that was inconceivable. Not only the magic she worked so hard to summon, but, more vitally, that which manifested in nature, even here, in the heart of the city where she lived. Which was why it would never have worked, Becca reminded herself as she began the walk home. Even if she'd taken the boyish geek back, as he'd begged at one point, after he'd admitted to cheating. Even if he hadn't scoffed at her new job. "You've got a degree, Becca. Granted, it's in history, but still." Even if he hadn't made fun of her new interest in witchcraft and her family history, that one basic fact held true. You didn't need to be Wiccan to love the mystery of life. You did, however, have to see that the mystery, the magic, was real. Which didn't mean that Becca didn't wish for someone special. For a brief while, she'd thought that the one man in their coven, the dashing Trent, was interested. That hadn't panned out, which was probably just as well. Trent and Larissa, the coven's founder, rarely joined the group's regular meetings, though word was they might show for the upcoming summer solstice. That was shaping up to be a big deal. Already, texts were flying. A circle, of course, evoking the spirits of nature on that auspicious day, and a party to follow. Last year, they'd managed to hold it.